Hello, sisters and brothers. Our devotional for today, for July 17, is a reflection on My Utmost for His Highest, a series of devotionals written and compiled by Oswald Chambers. You can always find the link for the daily devotional at utmost.org. And for today's devotional, we're going to turn to 1 Corinthians chapter 2. I'll read the first 5 verses of that chapter. 1 Corinthians 2, verse 1, "And so it was with me, brothers and sisters. When I came to you, I did not come with eloquence or human wisdom as I proclaimed to you the testimony about God. For I resolved to know nothing while I was with you except Jesus Christ and Him crucified. I came to you in weakness, with great fear and trembling. My message and my preaching were not with wise and persuasive words, but with a demonstration of the Spirit's power, so that your faith might not rest on human wisdom, but on God's power." And Chambers titles this devotional "The Miracle of Belief," focusing on verse 4 of that chapter. "My speech and my preaching were not with persuasive words of human wisdom." Paul was a scholar and an orator of the highest degree. He was not speaking here out of a deep sense of humility, but he was saying that when he preached the gospel, he would veil the power of God if he impressed people with the excellency of his speech. Belief in Jesus is a miracle produced only by the effectiveness of redemption, not by impressive speech, nor by wooing and persuading, but only by the sheer, unaided power of God. The creative power of redemption comes through the preaching of the gospel, but never because of the personality of the preacher. Real and effective fasting by a preacher is not fasting from food, but fasting from eloquence, from impressive diction, and from everything else that might hinder the gospel of God being presented. The preacher is there as a representative of God, as though God were pleading through us, 2 Corinthians 5, verse 20. He is there to present the gospel of God. If it is only because of my preaching that people desire to be better, they will never get close to Jesus Christ. Anything that flatters me in my preaching of the gospel will result in making me a traitor to Jesus, and I prevent the creative power of His redemption from doing its work. "And I, if I am lifted up, will draw all peoples to myself." John 12, verse 32. So it's really hard to expand on that when the message of that is just to be simple. But I think it is a good reminder, and there's one line in particular where I'm thinking about how I've often reflected on certain churches that seem to be pastor-centered or preacher-centered, and there is a danger in that. You don't want that to be the focus of your church, not only because it gives the wrong focus and it takes the focus off from God, but also because of what will happen once that pastor moves on. You want the work of the kingdom, you want the work of the church to continue and to carry on no matter what. And as we're reminded here, not only in this passage, but then on Chambers' reflection, sometimes the more that we know, the more that we want to try to explain things. We want to try and make it sound really good. But what is often the most powerful is just the simple and direct testimony of what God has done in our lives, keeping the gospel plain and simple. As I was going through seminary, there were some books where we were assigned them for reading, and I would start reading through them, and the first chapter I would have to read and reread so many sections because the author was using so many complex and intelligent words to say very simple things. And it almost hurt my heart because I thought, why do we feel as if we need to make this sound fancier? We need to make this sound more complicated than it is, especially because my heart is for the people who maybe haven't really heard the gospel message. We need to keep it simple, and we need to keep it plain. In our everyday testimony, in our everyday sharing with other people, don't worry about how many scripture verses you can quote. It's good to know and have scripture memorized, have it in your heart. But for the sake of sharing the gospel with someone else, just keep it simple, keep it plain, allow God to work through you, because you never want yourself to be the focus. It's always about God. It's always about pointing back in that direction. So I think that's a very simple message, a very good reminder for us today. Thank you as always for listening. Be safe and stay well.